Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. We are excited to have you here today. This is going to be a very exciting, fun fireside chat. We will give you a chance to ask some questions as well. But to kick off, so my name is Cheryl Mack. I am the founder and CEO of the Aussie Angels platform, and we support investors such as Rob to run their own angel syndicates and funds. In this particular case, we are going to be talking to Rob Nathan, who is one of my favorite investors out west on the West Coast. I've been over there a number of times, and Rob has always been very hospitable. And also a great deal flow over there for anyone who's wondering why we think this is a great idea and why Rob is leading this. So Rob is from Curtin University. They have recently launched actually it's relaunched technically. Rob has run a syndicate on Aussie Angels for the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 months. I've done a couple deals, but this is kind of a rebrand. So I'm excited to jump into it with you, Rob. I'm going to start off by just getting you to tell us a little bit about Curtin University.
Right. Okay. I guess, I'm a graduate of Curtin University. I graduated with an electronics engineering degree in 1987. In fact, the truth is when I started at the university, it didn't have university status. When I started, it was the West Australian Institute of Technology. And thankfully, while I was there, basically it managed to get university status. And when I graduated with a university degree in engineering.
That's neat.
So, Curtin University now is it's tending towards being a international university now. It's got a campus in Singapore, and I think it's got a campus in Malaysia as well. It's always been had a focus around innovation and commercialization of stuff that's been through the university. And in fact, I can see we've got Matt McFarlane. He's waving there in the background. So he took, in fact, one of Curtin University's projects from the university, took it through a venture capital fund, and then listed it on the stock market. So, the university's got a long track record in science and innovation and commercializing innovation. It's been the Curtin University in Western Australia has been a prominent leader, really. It's been a leader in the ecosystem in Western Australia, kicking off, I think, which was like the WA App Awards. I'm not sure what year that started, back in about 2009 or 2010, that's since morphed into the West Tech Fest. That's the annual tech festival that happens in Perth each year. And that, again, is led and championed by Curtin University. So Curtin has, been, more so than any other, significantly more so than any other university in Western Australia. It has been at the centre of the startup ecosystem in Western Australia since the very beginning.
Amazing. And yes, also I have been to West Tech Fest. It is fantastic. If you haven't and you're on this call, I highly recommend that you check it out this year. It's normally early December, so it's a fantastic time to pop over to WA. Awesome. Well, so Rob, you've been investing for a number of years. You're pretty prominent in the WA startup scene there. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and experience areas?
Yeah, sure. As I said before, I started as an electronics engineer, Curtin University, graduating 87. I quickly moved. I spent a couple of years as an engineer, but I quickly moved across to a role in product management, which I really enjoyed. And I worked for a number of tech companies during the first tech boom, because I've been around for a while. In fact, one of those companies that I worked for hit a valuation of $1 billion during the first tech boom, until it eventually crashed and burned in around 2005. So, I think from 2005 onwards, anyone who's involved in tech in Australia, it was the doldrums. There wasn't a lot really going on. And, there certainly weren't many job opportunities in tech, and certainly in product management as a role in Western Australia. So in 2009, I started my own company. And when I started that company, I also simultaneously got involved in what was the startup ecosystem in Perth back in 2009, which really was, there was just like one monthly meeting. It was like the first Tuesday of the month in the city, this group called E-Group And that really was the genesis of the startup ecosystem in Perth back in 2009. So what's that, 30 people? I mean, you could squeeze, I'm sure the same was true in Sydney and other cities. You could squeeze the whole startup ecosystem into just like one small room.
It's
So
pretty funny. Like, I think it's similar in Sydney as well. Like, if you go back 10 years, the number of angel investors that were in Sydney, like you could squeeze them into a room. You could squeeze them into maybe a slightly bigger room, maybe like hotel room, whereas you could maybe squeeze yours into like a closet.
yeah. Interestingly, back in that early cohort of startups included Cliff Obrecht from Canva.
Yeah. Yeah, because the founders are from there, right?
That's right. But when he was with in that cohort, he was Fusion Books was the startup that he and Melanie were working on at that time, and that was the startup that he had in that early cohort in Perth, in the early 2010s. So to my knowledge, he never came back into that group and pitched Canva. So I never had the opportunity to invest in Canva, which is fine because what if I'd said no?
Yeah. I'm not sure which is worse, like not getting the opportunity or getting it and saying no.
Yeah. Yeah. I probably didn't quite have enough money to invest in it back then. So probably better that he didn't pitch that into that group.
So when and how did you start angel investing?
Well, so in around I think I've been trying to check my dates. In around 2013, I decided to go to Sydney, go to the big city, Sydney, and find out what's happening in Sydney. So I went to Sydney. I think I went to Fishburners, met with Peter Brad from Fishburners, who was the CEO then. I caught up with Innovation Bay, Ian Gardner, and then I also caught up with Nikki Skivak, who at that point in time was running the StartMate Accelerator program. Of course, StartMate was such a great concept. Mentors putting their money in and mentoring the next generation of startups. So inspired by Nikki and StartMate, I came back to Perth with the idea to basically start a mentor-driven accelerator program like StartMate. So in 2015, we launched the Upstart Accelerator program that was a mentor-driven accelerator program. So again, I've got to make a shout out to a couple of people on the call. Again, Matt McFarlane, I think David Linton's on this call as well. And they were basically investors that backed that first accelerator program back in Perth in 2015. So really my angel investment journey really starts on the back of setting up and running an accelerator program in Perth in 2015, 2016. So we did 15 startups over 2 years. We gave each startup $40,000 and they went through your typical sort of 3-month mentor-driven accelerator program.
And didn't you bring them over to StartCon one year?
Yes. So what we decided to do was in 2015 and 2016, at the end of the program, take the whole cohort, go to Sydney, go to StartCon.
Which I ran, by the way, which is why I know that.
So that's when I first met you, was 2015. You were running StartCon and we took the whole cohort. It was such a great experience for the startups. They got to go to Sydney. They participated in the pitching. They got to see that there's lots of competition. There's a bigger startup ecosystem, that it's quite competitive. And yes, that was the StartCon. I think that it was the Randwick race course. Was that 2015?
No, 2015. That must have been 2016 and 17 that you did those, because 2015 was at the town hall.
Oh, the town hall, right? Yeah.
But either way, so good. And like full circle, right? Like now you run a syndicate on the Aussie Angels platform that I also run. And there was a good batch of maybe you did it 2 years. But yeah, there's some good startups that came over. I am consistently impressed by the quality of startups that I meet who are in and from WA.
Yeah. I mean, so that was 2015, 2016. I guess the challenge in Perth back in 2015, 2016, one, there weren't many angel investors. Two, there weren't any active venture capital funds. There weren't any venture capital funds investing in Perth at that time. And there weren't many East Coast venture capital funds at that point in time. So great, we ran an accelerator program. They got $40,000, but at the end of the program, there wasn't follow-on capital. There weren't any venture capital funds. 1 or 2 managed to raise capital and continue, but the vast majority of those, without follow-on capital, withered and died. which is, I think things have changed to where they are now. So following on from that, after 2 years of running an accelerator program myself, I looked at the data and the data didn't support continuing. So then somebody else decided to run an accelerator program, which was Brodie McCulloch from Space Cubed, an accelerator program called +8. So I decided to just jump on that program and be a mentor in that program, which I still am today. So the +8 program has now done 43 companies across 7 cohorts over the last 7 years. And in fact, this year, the +8 program has got $1.2 million in seed capital to invest, which is just an astonishingly large amount of capital.
Yeah, wow. And doesn't Curtin also run a accelerator program, or is that the same one?
No, it's a different one. So I've been mentoring a +8, and investing in companies off the back of +8 over the last 7 years. And Curtin does have, well, I think the first program that Curtin ran was called Curtin Ignition. And that really was a program that was targeted at, entrepreneurial education for their researchers and their students. And then they followed on from that to launch a program called Curtin Accelerate. That's kind of a follow-on. Curtin Ignition is a week-long, it's probably like a pre-accelerator program. So it's a week-long intensive startup boot camp. And then there is Curtin Accelerate. That is your more traditional sort of 8-10 week accelerator program. They provide, it's only $5,000 in grant funding. You've got an entrepreneur in residence. You've got subject matter experts, and you've got mentors. So that's your more traditional accelerator program. So that Curtin Accelerate program is open to, obviously, Curtin alumni, people who've previously been through the Curtin Ignition program. It's open to Curtin staff and generally the Curtin University ecosystem. So last year, Curtin invited me to be an entrepreneur in residence at Curtin University. So that covered off on just general advice to students, to basically the Curtin Ignition program, and also the Curtin Accelerate program. So last year, I had the opportunity to sit in the Curtin University ecosystem, and I was really, really, really impressed with the quality of the deal flow that I saw going through that whole Curtin University ecosystem.
Yeah, amazing. And I guess so you were running a syndicate, and I'm trying to remember the name of it now, but you were running another one that you did a couple deals, and then you're like, I'm helping this like Curtin Accelerate program. We want to do a syndicate for them as well. And so we kind of convinced you to merge the two, but maybe you can explain a little bit like, that transition and why you think that, why is Curtin opening a syndicate now?
Yeah. And so we did have a syndicate, which was called the West Tech Investor Network.
Yes.
Right? And that was built on the back of the West Tech Fest. That, in fact, again, has a Curtin link, because the West Tech Fest is basically a Curtin-sponsored
Tech Fest.
Tech Fest. So we were kind of like, essentially, if you like, riffing on the Curtin brand anyway through the West Tech Fest. So through the course of the last year, we're running the West Tech Investor Network as a separate thing. And I was also mentoring in the Curtin Accelerate program. And basically what I saw is that the deal flow in the Curtin Accelerate program was as good as, if not better, than the deal flow that we're getting through this syndicate called the West Tech Investor Network. So just decided basically to double down and go, well, let's just double down and call it the Curtin Invest Syndicate, and just focus on the Curtin University ecosystem. I mean, you're doing it, Cheryl. It's really, really hard it's good to have a focus. And it's a bit hard if you're trying to be all things to all people. I mean, you have lots of syndicates on the platform that are focused on verticals like climate change and electrification. So I guess what I'm doing here is pivoting not to a specific vertical, but pivoting to, the Curtin University ecosystem, to really, really focus and double down on that and go do a deep dive into that ecosystem, where basically I've got the inside running in terms of a working relationship with, the whole Curtin team, to basically get early access, not just early access, but early insights to meet founders really, really early in their journey. So I think that's the benefit of being involved in Curtin. And, there's not a lot of other investors floating around in that ecosystem. I mean, Scalata Ventures has invested in a couple of Curtin Accelerate companies, but at this stage, there isn't necessarily at this stage any great competition for deal flow. So I think it's just a good opportunity. I guess
Yeah,
one thing
some good
just to
alpha there.
clarify, and I think we're going to have to just do a bit of a slight rebrand again, is that the syndicate isn't backed by the university. The syndicate is primarily backed by Curtin University alumni, Curtin University, the Curtin University ecosystem, angel investors who are
Interested in
Curtin
good deal
University
flow.
graduates, and also who aren't. So really, it's a syndicate that's backed by the Curtin University ecosystem, and basically, it's pretty much like previous Curtin alumni coming back and supporting the next generation of Curtin graduates. I know I got Matt Lana on the call as well. Matt's a exited Curtin graduate, who's come back into the ecosystem again to help out the next generation. So that's what it's all about. It's about supporting the next generation of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and making some money while you're doing it, hopefully.
Making some money. Yeah, making some money. Yep.
Yeah. And one of the things I love about getting deal flow from from being a mentor is that ability to build relationships with the founders. So maybe tell us a little bit more about like how do you kind of evaluate founders in terms of potentially investing over the course of, the 3 months?
Yeah. Well, I think in the case of this Curtin Accelerate graduate, of this latest Curtin Accelerate cohort, I mentored one of those startups. So I had first-hand of experience from beginning to end of their experience. Of course, each of the other Curtin Accelerate members of this current cohort also had another mentor. So basically, the opportunity is to collect input and feedback from all the mentors involved in the program to get their feedback in terms of how they are as entrepreneurs, in terms of their coachability, all that sort of stuff. But I think, I've been involved in accelerator programs for 9 years. What I've observed is that basically during the 3-month program, most startups do a lot. They're really motivated. They've got a little bit of capital. They're really motivated, passionate, committed. It's what happens when they leave the accelerator program that is the more interesting part. So really, you've got if you're investing in, you've got a data point, which is the start of the accelerator program. 3 months later, you've got a data point is when they exit the program. And then really, I think the next data point really is 6 to 12 months later. Where are they at after they finish the accelerator program? I mean, lots of founders go back to what they're doing before. They go back to their day jobs. So for me, I think really the investment decision in what I'm looking at is, where are they 6 to 12 months after they finish the program? Do they do what they say they're going to do? What have they done? What traction have they, what have they achieved? So, so far on this journey, I've gone back all the way back to 2021, looked at 46 companies that have been through the Curtin Accelerate program and, finding out where they are and where they've got to. So at the moment, it's probably, I'm doing more detailed due diligence and analysis of those companies that graduated last year, looking to see those companies that have put products into market and what traction they're getting. So I think it's a case of not making an investment decision at the end of the program, but 6 to 12 months after they graduate is probably the sweet spot to identify if or not they're going to be successful.
Yeah, super interesting. I didn't realize that a lot of them actually just, did the program and then went back to their day jobs, which arguably I'd rather a founder find out through a program over 3 months that this actually isn't for them than start a company, spend a bunch of money, and 12 months later be like, actually, I don't want to be a founder. So I think programs like this are actually good for that, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a $5,000 grant. So,
to explore.
in some cases to explore. I mean, that's the way a lot of these accelerator programs originally were designed. It was, basically over your university. I mean, you go back to Y Combinator, the goal, or, do an experiment over your school holidays, university holidays, see what you can do in those 3 months.
Is that how it started?
How it started.
Did not know that. I always thought incubators were the ones that were like, hey, we'll just like throw you in a room, give you $5,000 and see what happens. And accelerators were the ones that were like, oh, you have a company, let's help you go fast.
Yeah, no, Paul Graham, Y Combinator, basically university holidays. He said to university students, rather than basically just going and getting a job working in a pub over the university school holidays, here, I'll give you a little bit of money, what you'd earn if you were just earning in a pub, and you do some work on an interesting project over the 3-month university holidays.
Whatever, whatever you want to work on, here's some money to do it. That's actually so brilliant. I love that. Like, you just like we all take accelerator programs for granted, thinking about like, so many and how many that we have even in Australia, and then how many we have globally. But I didn't know the history of that, and like who actually came up with this concept, and most of them are 3 months, because that makes sense now. I hope you all have learned something. I have learned something. I will open it up for questions in a minute. And so if you do want to ask a question, please feel free to raise your hand. You can come off mute, have a chat with Rob, or if you are not in a position to do so, if it's super loud where you are, please feel free to just pop your question in the chat. I will read it out. So start thinking of your questions while I continue with Rob. So tell us, what kinds of deals can investors expect to see from your syndicate? Like how many, what stages, what types of companies?
Yeah. At the moment, we're carrying a Curtin University brand along with us. So they are a little bit, at this stage, they're a little bit wary because it is their brand, although their brand is attached to the syndicate. So we'll probably look to do 2 deals inside probably the next six months. Basically looking at the Curtin Accelerate at this stage, Curtin Accelerate. This year's cohort and last year's cohort are probably within some of those companies. Also, there's another accelerator program. In fact, the Mac McFarlane again is leading in terms of the energy transition, kicking off in a couple of weeks. I think, Matt, is the next.
That's cool.
Call?
Maybe Matt, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So it's called NETA, which is the National Energy Transition Accelerator. It's Curtin University together with the University of Queensland and James Cook University in Queensland as well. Its focus is kind of in the critical mineral space because it got a bunch of funding from Trailblazer, I think it's called, which is a national program. It's also got a bunch of funding from Woodside as well, trying to do a good thing for all the oil and gas they've tried to suck out of the ground. And the National Energy Transition Accelerate program has 9 participants, which we've announced. And they're a mix of kind of interesting companies doing water purification through to battery technology to, new ways of extracting hydrogen from all sorts of things and biofuels and so on. So quite interesting, very wide range of stages of development. Some have revenue, some are literally in the lab. So the goal is not like some accelerators where you want to end and just go and raise funding. It's actually more oriented around at the end of the program for people to decide, is this something I should commercialize or something I should just license as technology? What kind of deals might there be out there? How big's the market? That sort of stuff. And we're putting them in front of a lot of different mentors who understand energy transition really well, so that we can create contacts and context for them that they don't really have as startup people or researchers. Yeah, so it's kicking off on the 17th of July, and we'll be graduating, I think, on the first week of September it'll finish. So it's only 7 or 8 weeks.
Awesome. How many companies will go through?
9.
9. Excellent. Is there going to be a demo day?
Yeah, that's the one in the first week.
I think, yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, hopefully you can share the invite with all of us. Rob, make sure you share that out with everyone in the syndicate.
Sure. I'll pop it in the chat.
Oh, you already have the link. Perfect. Great. Yes, please pop that in the chat.
Yeah, so so beyond Curtin Accelerate, we'll probably have a look through the companies that are going through that Accelerate program as well. So I mean, the Curtin Accelerate as a program, I mean, you've basically got a lot of the companies are typical of what you see in accelerator programs, 2-sided marketplaces, health and well-being stuff, lots of stuff going through of that nature. But I think what we'll see in the Curtin Accelerate programs and other programs at the university is, I'm not going to say necessarily deep tech, but deeper tech, stuff that that is really innovative stuff, that does have a scientific background. So I think that's what we'll probably be looking for. in this program, and that we'll be looking to back is companies that do, I mean, as we all know, software is really easy to develop these days. It's getting easier and easier with no code and low code. So my traditional investment background has been software as a service type companies. But I think in the context of the Curtin Accelerate program, we'll be looking, go a little bit deeper in stuff that basically is a little bit more innovative, maybe is a little bit more defensible, and certainly, hopefully, companies that will meet the criteria to be early stage innovation companies. I mean, by completing the Curtin Accelerate program, they immediately get 50 points.
The points.
Of the required 100 points. So hopefully most of the companies will qualify as innovative companies. And as we go, we'll push deeper into the university ecosystem and hopefully uncover some really innovative stuff that's solving, some really, really worthwhile, meaningful problems.
Yeah, amazing. I think it's very like it's as long as they're an Australian company and they do an accelerator, getting the other 50 points is not hard. It's like,
No.
have you gotten some sort of funding from someone? And like, it's super easy. So as long as they're Australian based companies. Michael, you had a question. Please feel free to come off mute.
Thanks. And Matt, thank you for the overview of all the programs with Curtin. Obligatory shout out to Ignition. I went through the program in 2015.
Cool.
And that's really helped me in my startup journey along the way. Just wanted to ask you a few questions about, I guess, the deal flow, what that sort of looks like from a Curtin perspective. First question is, I'm very interested in medical technology or med tech, digital health and biotech. Are you seeing much med tech and medical technologies come out of Curtin in conjunction with the medical school?
Actually, I'm just interested. I'm thinking back through the companies I've looked through the course of back to 2021. And to be honest, the answer to that probably is no. I'm struggling, certainly looking through last year's. Haven't seen. There's lots of health and well-being related stuff. Like in this year's cohort, there's a digital health platform that helps women suffering from endometriosis. It's a digital.
Matilda Health.
Is that
Matilda Health?
Yeah, Matilda Health. Yeah. So I wouldn't classify that as med tech.
No, digital health. Yeah.
Generally speaking, UWA is a lot stronger when it comes to medical technology commercialization. They because their proximity to the medical research facilities and the hospital there, and they just generally seem to do a lot more on the medtech side than Curtin does. Curtin's a lot.
I mean, it's close to sort of Perkins, but I also understand that Curtin University recently invested in a medical school, so it'll be very interesting. Matt, both Matts actually. Maybe it's a chat we can have offline. I've got a lot of ideas. We could talk about. My other sort of follow-up question is just sort of around how does it tend to look like for Curtin? Does Curtin take equity from the startups? If so, what sort of quantum? Just really curious of what that sort of ends up looking like.
Sure. So Curtin basically provides essentially an equity-free grant funding of $5,000. So Curtin basically doesn't invest in the startups necessarily as, when they start the program. I mean, Curtin does have its own investment portfolio, and it does invest in some of the startups that go through the Curtin Accelerate program, which they're, so that's on presumably that's on their own balance sheet, which they tend to keep relatively close to their chests in terms of what companies that they invest in. But they are completely separate to the Curtin Accelerate program. They are making investments directly in some of the startups that graduate through the Curtin Accelerate program. So our decision-making process in terms of what we invest in is completely independent of Curtin's own investment process and what they invest in from their own balance sheet. There will be and is crossover where it just so happens that the Curtin is in fact investing off their own balance sheets in startups that we are also investing in. And so that's a completely separate process that I have no involvement in. The decision process that we make here basically is independent of that Curtin investment process.
Brilliant. Awesome. Thank you.
Could I add a little bit to that, Rob? Just on.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, Curtin's approach to IP ownership is a 50-50 approach with the researchers if there's been a development within the university. So they often end up in the spin out company having an equity stake in that company. That equity stake has not been married necessarily with direct cash investment, but they provided facilities or invested in that person's PhD or whatever they've done in the past to get that equity stake. They also have an investment advisory board, I believe, where they can place cash directly into businesses. And that can be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So historically, they've invested up to $500,000 into startups as they spin out, but they typically do that co-investing with other venture investors or large corporate investors. So they like to make sure someone else has done the diligence and they're not sort of just backing their own spin outs. But as Rob said, this decision process is separate from that and wouldn't be contingent upon Curtin participating, but it might encourage them to. And for the National Energy Transition Accelerator, each participant and the 9 participants get $10,000 equity-free cash to do as they wish. And it doesn't even have to go into the company. It can go directly to the researcher to do whatever they want to do with it. It's very, very flexible, this particular program.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what you'll see coming out of the Curtin Accelerate, maybe we'll see some more med tech coming in the future, but certainly there's obviously quite a bit of stuff that sits around critical minerals. We'll see a bit of that stuff coming through, like this year through the Curtin Accelerate program, when a company called Rapid Graphite, and what they do, they've got a unique process whereby they heat material, carbonaceous material like wood, they heat it to 3,000 degrees, combine it with a magic catalyst that turns it into synthetic graphite, for example. So there is some, some of that sort of critical mineral resource industry type tech that will certainly be coming through the Curtin Accelerate program.
That's so cool. I mean, I think what's interesting there for me, Rob, is like you kind of have a little bit of a like technical background, like a little bit, like your first year or two there, but generally, like, you certainly don't have a degree in graphite.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe like help investors understand how you get comfortable with a deal that is more scientific than you necessarily understand.
Yeah, well, basically that is a learning curve, for me as an investor, basically. I mean, I have a background in engineering, so I do have a background in science. So yeah, it's a case of rolling up your sleeves and, getting into the laboratories, which I'm doing, to gain a better first-hand understanding of the science and the technology. But it's still fundamentally a lot of the very, very similar criteria in terms of what we're looking to invest in companies, which is what problem you're solving. Is this a real problem? What does your path to market look like, and how do you prove that the market opportunity exists? But yeah, so it is a learning curve in terms of some of that. I mean, that rapid graphite, which is to some extent deep technology that exists in a laboratory. That one exists in a laboratory today, and it produces the tiniest, about that much graphite. So there's obviously a scaling issue to scale up to produce, enough graphite to actually start putting into batteries. Because there's more graphite in a lithium-ion battery than there is lithium. So, and most of it comes out of China. God knows how they make it over there.
I think Rob Davis had a question, Cheryl.
Yeah, Rob.
Unmute myself. Yeah, look, thanks. Really good conversation. And just Cheryl, I'll put a plug in for Rob. I don't know a huge amount of Rob's background, but I also graduated from Curtin University, probably actually quite a few years earlier than Rob. But at least in an engineering degree, you tend to do physics and chemistry as some of your foundation subjects in the course. And I guess the approach of what you talked about there, Rob, about looking at product and science-based investments, I guess fits with a lot of the things that I've got into over the years. So just Cheryl, I chair Southwest Angels down south in Western Australia.
Amazing. Yes, I came down there. You guys, I was part of the like investor weekend. I think we might have met when I was there.
Yes. And I think I met you up in Perth at West Tech Fest as well. Yeah, so look, my question for Rob was just around the DD process. I think from what I understand, by being involved, seeing the businesses go through the accelerator gives you first-hand visibility of both the people and the technology. And I guess, look, in the past, I used to use the grant projects, some of the federal and state government grant projects effectively to be able to do paid DD on businesses that you may be interested in. Yeah, so do you want to just talk us through what you do if are you always seeing people in the accelerators, or do you have some that are outside the accelerators that you look at, and how do you go about that process?
Yeah, well, the first process, what I've done this year is basically just Curtin Accelerate. So that's basically going back to 2021, 46 companies and reaching out to those founders, finding out where they're up to, where necessary, follow up a meeting with those founders if there's anything interesting happening. So basically, it's just getting a meeting face to face or on Zoom or whatever to catch up with the founders and just inquiring about where they're up to and where they've got to, and looking for evidence that basically they're moving forward in some way, be it with the product in market or some form of traction.
And what about the things like the product market fit, and what are you doing any analysis, or basically just to a large extent relying on what they've got and what they can give you?
No, I think basically, these companies are very, very early stage. So I'm going to just have to, dive in myself. I'm currently doing due diligence on one that went through last year. And, I'm just going to have to do the first-hand due diligence about the problem that they say they're solving. Is that problem real? Does it really exist? They've got a number of customers. I'm going to have to get on the phone and talk to some of their customers to find out, what their experience has been so far, to what extent it's a problem, and to what extent that the product that they have purchased, in some case, are they using it? So,
Okay.
Get in there, use the product, check it out for myself.
And you can do a fair bit, web searching. You can come up with speed on a lot of the competing technology and whatnot reasonably quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Rob. And I also on that kind of DD side, we as Aussie Angels, we do a level of legal DD on the documents and review all of those as well. So we take that kind of that final tick box step to make sure that all of the documents are what they say they're supposed to be. We do KYC or KYB on the companies and its directors as well. So there's that extra level. Not that we find anything, because if it gets through someone like Rob's DD, then it typically is fine, but there's an extra level of comfort there. But yeah, I appreciate you giving a shout out for Rob and his background. I guess what I was trying to highlight is that that you don't necessarily have to be or have to have that type of background or an understanding of these deep scientific concepts in order to join the syndicate and invest. I think for investors, what I was hoping to kind of highlight there was that you can rely a little bit on Rob's background, but also start to get yourself comfortable with these things, even if you don't fully understand the science. But like Rob said, the concepts around what makes a successful company are similar across the board.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, really, success still takes a long time, right? Whether it's deep technology, even a software startup, success takes 10 years. So, the time frames are long. So it's not necessarily the stuff that's a little bit deeper tech, it's still going to take a long period of time. That's no different from some of the software startups as well. I mean, in terms of talking product market fit, my experience is it typically takes a company about 3 years, probably from when they start, to find that magic sweet spot of product market fit. So we all have to be very patient, and that's one of our requirements of joining the syndicate, is we all need to be long-term patient investors. And, the returns are there if you take a portfolio approach and take a long-term view.
But another question, if I may, what about at the exit end of things, Rob? So in terms of actually managing that exit process, so I guess that's one thing I get involved in a lot, is actually strategically positioning the business and actually then running the exit process for them.
Okay, right.
Because often that's where the founders can get it to a certain point, but if you're trying to sell to a global international company, you need a certain level of I guess, experience in terms of talking with them and negotiating a deal like that.
Mm.
So yeah, how do you, I guess that's a bit of a horses for courses for each of the ventures, but have you been through that process yourself?
No, to be honest, I haven't. I mean, basically, I typically have and do stay involved to some extent, varying involvements with companies that basically I've invested in. In most cases, in terms of exits, those founders have run that exit process themselves. And I have had limited involvement in those exit processes. I do have a couple of companies in my portfolio now that have been in my portfolio for 10 years. And yeah, I probably will have to, in that case, start taking a more proactive approach to say, hey guys, we've been investors on your cap table for 10 years now. It would be
It's time.
Yeah, it's time to position yourselves to look for an opportunity to exit. Yep.
Yeah, because often that exit process can be a 2-3 year process itself to get yourself aligned to the right buyers.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I guess on that point as well, like when obviously you guys do that work, but when there is an exit, we do manage that whole process around returning money to investors. So you can rest assured there's a trusted source there that collects everything, make sure everything gets distributed properly. And
how did that work, Cheryl, in terms of just the Aussie Angels involvement in that section of the transaction and such?
Yeah, so we don't tell founders, when it's time to exit. We don't do that strategic part that you do. But when that time comes and it is happening, then again, we have that like legal lens of making sure that all the transactions are where they're supposed to be going, and that we are involved in the process in terms of like how the startup exits, getting that money back, and then we also take care of just redistributing the money back out to everyone. So we confirm your bank details and make sure that you get exactly the amount that you're supposed to get.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, on the exit front, it will be interesting to see now how we go in Australia in terms of how those sort of exits progress. I mean, obviously in Australia, listing on the Australian stock market is not really an option. Listing in the NASDAQ, so listing generally isn't an option for Australian companies, really. So it really does come down to some
unless you make burritos, apparently.
Unless you make burritos, yeah. So really, for Australian companies looking to exit, it's some form of, trade sale, strategic acquisition, more likely probably to come out of the US than it is Australian private equity. Australian private equity probably will just buy burritos and Kentucky Fried Chicken. So, it's probably, we've got to look, I think, to position our companies for strategic exits, perhaps in overseas US markets, where you've got those strategic acquirers and private equity funds. Certainly that's been my experience so far in terms of exits. That's where they look like they'll come from.
Awesome. Any other questions? No? All right. One other thing we might just cover is that Rob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there are no requirements to join the syndicate. So, Alex has posted the link there, but you don't need to be a Curtin alumni in order to join. You don't need to have any affiliation, just a desire to get great deal flow from Rob and Curtin. There's also no requirement to invest if you join. Joining is simply putting up your hand to say, hey, Rob, I'm interested in what you're investing in. If you're investing, I'd like to know about it. And so that's you just enter your name and email and create an account. And then when Rob is investing in something, he basically writes up the notes on why he's investing in that company and shares it with you. And then you can decide on a deal by deal basis as to whether you want to invest in that company or not. And there's no fees until you decide to invest. So there's fees on a deal by deal basis, but there's no cost to join the syndicate and no requirement to invest. Last question, Rob, any exciting deals coming up?
Yeah, well, I've just started drafting the first deal memo. So basically the plan is to hopefully launch the first deal in July. So subject to the due diligence part of the process, which I'll do in conjunction with writing the deal memo. So hopefully the first deal we'll see will be in July.
Amazing. Awesome. All right. Well, we will leave it at that. Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you for sharing everything with us today, Rob. And we'll look forward to that first deal.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.